CBS News White House correspondent Weijia Jiang is joining us now to talk more about the latest on the administration's response to the pandemic. Weijia, it's so great to be able to finally talk to you again on CBSN. I've been following your reporting all along on CBS This Morning and the Evening News, but I'm so happy to have you back on the air with us.
I'm so happy to see you guys, too. You know, I think we take it for granted because we are talking to each other every day for work, and you realize that, you know, we're not just colleagues, you know, and we're spending time together. We spend hours talking here on CBSN, and when that goes away, you really miss it. So I'm really happy to be here with you guys.
Yeah, it really is. We're all in this together. So, Weijia, let me ask you about yesterday and the president's briefing. He appeared with a testing machine at his side. What do you have to say about it, and where is the U.S. right now with testing?
So that is a new testing machine from the developer called Abbott, and the president actually unboxed it himself. It was a little awkward because the machine itself, he was holding it upside down. But anyway, he was trying to promote it because he says that you can get the test results within minutes, and that's true. It can detect coronavirus within about 5 minutes, and then in 15 minutes can give you a negative if you are in fact negative. And those have started to go out to different hospitals and doctors' offices, so we'll have to see how that plays out. But certainly he was celebrating not only that, but also the overall number of tests here in the U.S. He said we hit a really important milestone, and now more than 1 million Americans have been tested. He also pointed out, as he often does, that that's more than any country in the world. And I think, guys, the reason why he wants to hit that home as much as he can is because he has received so much criticism for the delay in testing and how that impacted the way this virus spread throughout the country.
And, you know,
so,
Vlad,
Emery,
let me
just
talk
follow up
a bit about this. The numbers, right? The numbers in terms of testing more than any other country in the world. You know, as you know, Vlad, numbers are one thing, but context is something else. And I know you want to jump in, so I'll let you go.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's something that I wanted to talk to Weijia about. The president made that claim yesterday that the United States has tested more people than any other country in the world. But Weijia, the number context is important, as Anne-Marie points out. That's far fewer per capita. The United States has a population of about 327 million. The president referenced South Korea. South Korea, if I'm looking at the numbers here, according to the Washington Post, as of March 28th, the United States had performed 2,250 tests per million. That is only 2/3 of what South Korea did 3 weeks ago.
It's pretty basic math. I mean, this is a fraction. At the bottom, you have the whole population, and at the top, you have the number of tests that have been performed. If your bottom number is 6 times bigger than South Korea's, which it is, I mean, the U.S. has about 330 million people compared to South Korea's 51.5 million. You know, obviously, when you're looking at the percentage of the population that's been tested, you have to factor in how many people there are to be tested when you look at the top number, which is the number of tests performed. And that's the per capita number that we keep talking about. Now, President Trump was asked about this very pointedly yesterday, about why he continues to boast about testing when the number per capita is lagging behind other countries. And he lashed out at that reporter and said, you ought to be congratulating this administration and me for all the hard work that we have done, rather than asking a snarky question. But it is an absolutely legitimate question, because you're right, that context matters. And it paints a picture that compared to other countries, the U.S. is behind. When we already know that testing is how you trace and track the virus and ultimately kill it. And if we aren't doing it as quickly as other countries, in the end, the number that will matter is the number of infections and fatalities. And you have to think about that when you're talking about the number of people being tested.
And Weijia, the president didn't just hear it from reporters yesterday. He also heard it from governors. He had a phone call with a number of governors, and they brought up the fact that they are in desperate need of equipment, some of it testing equipment, but also protective gear for medical personnel. What can you tell us about that phone call?
So this was a call with governors a few hours before the Rose Garden press briefing. And the president sold it as a great call because governors were thanking him and they were really appreciative. Now, while that's true, there were also concerns raised, especially by the governor of Montana, Steve Bullock, who says, hey, listen, in rural areas, these hospitals are going to be overwhelmed very soon because there is a lack of testing. There's a delay in testing because we still don't have the equipment needed to complete the tests. And CBS News obtained a copy of the recording of this call, thanks to our colleague Ed O'Keefe, and we heard what the president said in response. And he said, I haven't heard about testing in weeks. There are no problems with testing because we are doing more than any other country. Rather than saying, let me hear about these problems, let me address them. Again, he's trying to avoid the fact that not just Bullock, but other governors are still saying they do not have the number of test kits they need. They do not have the capability to track this virus, and they are worried because they're worried it's going to keep spreading if they don't have those tests.
Yeah, and the president continued also, Weijia, to make innuendos about where ventilators in New York State may have gone, offering no proof. And Governor Andrew Cuomo addressed that and said, you know, if the president has any suggestion that something nefarious is afoot here in New York State, he should open an investigation. But Weijia, I want to pivot and ask you about some non-coronavirus White House news. The Trump administration is expected to announce a rollback of Obama-era fuel efficiency standards. What can you tell us about that?
So this was a regulation that was a huge part of the Obama administration's efforts to fight pollution, right? I mean, by 2025, they were requiring automakers to produce cars that were able to be 54 miles to the gallon. And now, because of this new rule that the Trump administration is rolling out to replace that, that number drops to 40 miles to the gallon. And, you know, the research shows that that means about 1 billion tons more carbon dioxide would be allowed to emit into the air based on how long that vehicle is on the road. And so it's not necessarily surprising because President Trump ran on the promise of deregulation. And we know how he feels about climate control. He has already pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord with other countries to tackle climate change. He has called it a hoax before. And so this is just another way, a very substantial way for him to do that. And his thinking is that, you know, it lifts the burden from automakers to have to invest to make these fuel-efficient cars. And ultimately, he argues that, you know, consumers will benefit. But of course, opponents say, you know, there's a real long-term cost here, not only to the pollution, but we don't know how, you know, this is going to impact gas prices down the road. And so there's red flags already being raised, but ultimately people think this is going to end up in court anyway. But it is a sign, another one, that President Trump is moving forward, trying to keep those promises, because despite the crisis we are in, there is an election in November. And so, you know, they are pushing forward with other items on the agenda in addition to trying to contain the virus.
All right, Weijia, thank you so much. Great having you here today with us.
Great to be here.